Welcome to episode 28 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. The City on the Edge of Forever.
In this week's episode, a delirious McCoy stumbles through a portal that gives access to all of history, forcing Kirk and Spock to follow and prevent the Doctor making crucial changes to the timeline. With the existence of the Enterprise itself at risk, the Captain must make crucial decisions. But can he allow his head to rule his heart, or will his personal feelings put the future at risk?
Do you have a flop for the night?
What?
You really are new at this, aren't you?
Good evening, Ian. How's your flop tonight?
As good as always.
Floppy?
Flopping away.
The best way.
That's it.
The
It's
only
good,
way.
Good for the night.
Your age.
My age, says you. Quite a powerful story this week.
Yes, it was. Emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. Step up from last week, I would say.
Would not be hard.
That's true.
Me and you acting it out on a camcorder would be a step up from last week.
Let's put it in negative. We'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I liked this week. I liked the guest star. It wasn't without its faults. There was a few plot points I didn't think were tied up adequately.
Okay.
But we will get to that, I hope. Sometimes we say this and we never get around to it. Yeah. That's how it goes.
We'll blame Harlan Ellison. What's he going to do?
Is he dead now?
Yes.
I'm doing nothing then.
Exactly. Shall we get started?
Nothing you want to say?
Nah.
Right into it?
Yeah.
Crack on.
We begin on the bridge of the Enterprise.
We do.
We're not there for very long this week.
No, we start with an alert and the crew being thrown about as they experience extreme turbulence whilst orbiting a planet that I think they're plotting.
Well, they're not plotting the planet so much. We get a bit of exposition from Spock during this scene. They're passing through ripples in time, which are of great scientific importance.
Okay.
But as they do so, Sulu's console blows up, causing him injury of some kind.
Yeah, he's knocked out. But Spock stresses the, as you mentioned, scientific importance of what they're doing and experiencing, and doesn't want to, I suppose, halt the experiment.
He doesn't, and Kirk goes along with that. He orders them to maintain orbit, but just in case, he sends a suicide note to Starfleet Command detailing what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they got here.
Oh, I think he must call for McCoy to attend.
I think he has, or someone at least has called for McCoy to come and attend to Sulu because he arrives at this stage.
And decides that he needs a few risky drops of Cordrazine.
Cordrazine, yeah.
Yep.
I think Kirk goes to question him on this, but is quickly silenced by the success of the dosage.
Yeah, because I think Sulu starts to come round with his lovely eyeshadow on that he was clearly wearing.
And McCoy is not slow to let Kirk know that he was about to venture into somebody else's specialist territory.
Yeah, I suppose Kirk is the captain and he's entitled to question his subordinates' decisions, but I think at the end of the day, you have to bow down to someone's expertise.
Trust the professionals.
That's it, exactly. However, disaster does strike.
Yes, Spock has taken over the helm for Sulu and explains that they've mapped most of the ripples. They've got one more to go, but it's a big one.
How many ripples have you mapped?
7.
Okay.
The impact from this last one is bigger, I think, even than Spock's warning.
It's very unfortunate timing because McCoy at this point is examining close up the empty shot, or not the empty shot, I should say, the
hyperspray that he used, yes.
Yeah.
And is unfortunately then injected as he falls onto the device.
Yeah, right into the abdomen.
With a massive dose of Cordrazine, which, as Kirk explained earlier, is only safe in very small doses.
Yeah, this turns him into a sweating maniac, and he starts shouting about assassins and killers who are, well, I think he's calling the rest of the crew this.
Well, he certainly says they exist. Whether it's individuals he's naming, I don't know. But he runs off to the turbo lift before anyone is quick enough to stop him.
This is followed by the customary credits and then a captain's log, a supplemental.
Yeah, we don't get the star date. We're immediately into a supplemental captain's log.
Well, what does this inform us about?
Well, he tells us about the dosage of cordrazine, 100 times the amount that would save a man's life.
That sounds fatal to me, to be fair.
I think the issue is they don't really know, which seems crazy when they're administering it to people.
This is one of the points that I referenced earlier, and we will get to an unsatisfactory conclusion to this. However...
Anyway, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with McCoy, is what Kirk says.
I think he's on the loose in this crazed condition.
He, as we find out very shortly, is on his way to the transporter room.
Yes, he enters with wild eyes before I like this, very easily karate chopping. I think there's two, one to the lower back, one to the sort of trapezium, the top of the shoulders.
Well known to take a man down.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this before. It's very 60s, quite James Bond as well. I've never in real life seen anyone being in any way, not even like knocked down. It's even if someone done that to your back, you might hurt a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's stylized. It's because they didn't want to show actual punches.
Sure.
So this is meant to substitute for actual violence. McCoy beams himself. I think we saw. Was it last week? Yes, we saw the guy last week beam himself down and said, did that happen before? But McCoy does it as well here, so it must be possible.
Yeah, and we see him taking his phaser or the other chap's
phaser.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, up on the bridge, Kirk and Spock are discussing the possible symptoms that McCoy will be experiencing.
Well, I think does Kirk not tell Spock at first that he's spoken to medical and they have no understanding of the long-term prognosis of the condition?
Yeah, this seems very dicey to me.
Why?
Why are they going around giving it to Sulu, for example, when they don't know how it performs at different dosages?
Well,
surely there's been research done into this.
No, I mean, in
know
fairness,
what's safe and what's not safe.
No, I mean, if you take something that's 100th of what, no one's researched what would happen if you gave someone 100 times it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, why not? Why was that not part of the testing procedure?
But that's like saying, you have some chemotherapy or some sort of radiation treatment, but we're not sure what would happen. You're not going to give someone 100 times the dosage.
No, you don't have to do it to get an idea of what would happen, surely. And you know that if you give someone 100 times the amount of chemotherapy, it would fry all their internal organs and they would die. Yeah,
you would know that. So this, all you do is you assume that's what would happen. You assume the worst, don't you? And you don't give someone 100 times what's required.
I would have thought there would be more rigorous testing required.
I'm guessing perhaps that's how they got to that few dosages, was that they gave someone, say, 5 times as much and they died.
So and
they kept bringing it. They kept bringing it down, and they're saying, well, we know that 5's dodgy, so 100, we don't need to worry about that. It's definitely bad for you. Although, turns out not to be that bad.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just like getting drunk.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Spock and Kirk are informed at this point by security that the transporter chief's been disabled somehow and McCoy is beamed down to the surface.
Yeah, before they find that out, we've skipped over. Spock adds that I think he has looked into the computer files.
Okay.
And what that told him was that victims of an overdose become hugely paranoid and they don't recognise anyone. So that they've got some understanding of, I suppose, an overdose, but not to that extent.
Okay. Having learned that McCoy's on his way down to the surface, Spock notes that the transporters would have been focused on the time disturbance. I don't know why, or that doesn't make much sense to me.
No.
What have the transporters got to do with it?
Yeah. There's no intention of beaming down, so it wouldn't be focused anywhere.
I wouldn't have thought so. Anyhow, Kirk asks him to get a landing party together because they're going to have to go down there after McCoy.
And that's where we pick things up. On the planet, Kirk, Spock, Scotty, Uhura materialise with 2 random red shirts.
Yeah, I think Spock's been taking the mickey a bit here, putting this team together.
Why?
Who will we take? Scotty, Uhura.
Yeah, Uhura, you've not done much recently. Yeah. Do you want to come for a wee jaunt, a huddle?
It's only McCoy, it'll be fine. And time displacement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who else would they have taken? Sula's out of commission.
Well, Sula's been taken down, yeah, I suppose. So who else do you?
Mind you, they do whenever they feel like it. Bring into the show, experts on ancient history or botanics or
some random
psychology.
Could have come. Anyhow, they see a big stone ring. It's not really a ring, it's more wobbly than that, but it's set vertically amongst some ruins, which extend, Kirk says, as far as he can see.
Yeah, the terrain looks like, I suppose, ancient Greece.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that.
Columns and pillars and all that malarkey.
Spock's about to tell you it's even older than that, though.
Is it, yeah?
Around 10,000 centuries.
Yeah, fairly old.
That's quite old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, the ring also, on top of that, according to Spock, is the source of all the time displacement and is scientifically impossible.
See, that's the thing, yeah, he doesn't say it's, but out with my or our understanding. It's just, it's not impossible, you just don't understand it.
Well, yeah, the same as last week. Oh, it must be from outside the universe.
Yeah, because I can't work it out. So. I think at the same time as this, Uhura and Spock have begun recording on their tricorders.
Yes, and Spock notes that this time displacement they initially noted was they were millions of miles away when they first noted it, so it must be quite a strong effect that's being produced by this relic.
Uhura updates the Enterprise on their lack of success in finding McCoy.
Well, yeah, so they're being very incompetent. He's hiding behind a rock.
Yeah.
And they can't see him.
We see him appear furtively from behind this rock. Meanwhile, Kirk and Spock get a surprise interruption as they ponder what the oval might be.
Incredible power. It can't be a machine as we understand mechanics.
And what is it?
A question. Since before your sun burned hot in space, and before your race was born, I have awaited a question.
What are you?
I am the guardian of forever.
Are you machine or being?
I am both, and neither. I am my own beginning, my own ending.
I see no reason for answers to be couched in riddles.
My answer is simply as your level of understanding makes possible.
I was with Spock there on his annoyance at the riddles. There's no need for this. Answer it plain and simply. Enough of the nonsense.
Well, they just don't understand. It's being as simple as it can.
You see, we're seeing these tropes and you can appreciate why it's the writers of the show don't want to have to explain anything in depth. So it's always just a case of never mind, it's too complicated.
Move along.
Yeah.
Just accept it. I like the fact it called Spock's science knowledge primitive.
There must have been a raised eyebrow there.
I'm sure there was, and Kirk calls him out on it as well.
Yeah. We cut to McCoy heading from Scotty before returning to Spock, who suggests that the structure is a time portal and is taken aback when it confirms that he is correct enough based on his primitive scientific knowledge, which, as you mentioned, I think amuses. Kirk always likes it when Spock is shown up to be, or is made to feel that he's
not
not
the smartest.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, we start to see historical images appearing in the middle of this ring.
Yeah. For something so far in the future and so advanced, it's like a very old-fashioned, terrible TV picture.
But yeah, it's contemporary for that time.
So he couldn't remaster it. There's no
It's
enhancements.
presenting it in a way that Kirk and Spock would understand it.
No, but Kirk and Spock are from the future. This is not someone from the 60s watching
That's the
it.
best they can understand the 60s.
Yeah, obviously.
They've only ever seen it in black and white, so...
Yeah. Anyway, this footage I think is of ancient Egypt and Roman times and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and we see McCoy again appear yelling about killers and assassins, but he's very quickly subdued.
Yeah, the old nerve pinch from Spocky Boy.
That's that problem dealt with.
Kirk then has an idea.
It's a stupid idea.
It's a very stupid idea.
It's if there was ever an example of taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut, that's what this idea is.
Indeed. Especially as we've already discussed and they accept they don't know what the damage is. They have no understanding. They should just try and bring them back up, get other medics there to investigate, probe, look for antidotes, etc.
But no.
No, they think that... So what's his idea?
Maybe we should use this incredibly powerful relic that we have no real comprehension of to go back a day and stop McCoy injecting himself.
Crazy. You're just asking for trouble. Everything that happens is a result, again, we've mentioned before, and I specifically have of Kirk's sometimes atrocious decision-making as a captain. And this is one of them. At the very worst, McCoy has to die.
Okay.
You should not be taking him back in time. You should be risking the fact that he might die, but you know what? That's one person we cannot risk disrupting.
We don't even know what will happen yet.
Yeah, but you're messing about with time travel. You don't do it.
Kirk asks the Guardian, can you slow down a bit so we can just go back a day? And it says no.
No, I said, don't be silly. I'm showing you the whole of time. How?
It's like, I've been set to this speed. I'm very sorry. This is how it has to be.
We don't have a fast forward or... Yeah.
Kirk becomes almost compelled by these images. He's kind of staring into the ring as Spock notes that, crap, I should have been recording this on my tricorder.
Yeah. However, things take a turn as McCoy awakes from his pinch and manages to break free and run and jump through the portal himself.
He does. And this causes the landing party to lose contact with the Enterprise somehow.
Yeah, well, to me, that makes sense. So he's jumped through there, changed history, and therefore the Enterprise no longer exists, or certainly doesn't exist.
It's not there, yeah.
Yeah.
The Guardian explains that it's worse than that, though.
Well, they're trapped there alone.
And their entire lives didn't happen. Their history is changed, and the world, or the universe they knew, does not exist.
We can see them all take in the enormity of what has happened. And
Uhura being a pitiful woman.
Yeah, she's frightened. Help me,
I'm very scared.
Yeah.
I'm just a lady.
Kirk's like, I'm not scared.
We men will resolve this. Yes. We then get a dateless captain's log because time does not... That's Kirk being a little bit silly here, isn't he?
Mm.
He could just give the stardate it was.
He's emphasising the point, yeah.
Time no longer is existing.
This is how serious it is.
He explains that McCoy, back in the past, has effected some kind of change in the course of, or the passage of time, and all of Earth's history is gone, or is different.
Back on the planet, Spock apparently was recording just at the time when McCoy jumped through and is confident that he can predict within a month, maybe a week, when they should jump themselves. And Kirk tells him to make sure that they arrive before. Obviously, it'd be pointless to arrive after McCoy. This was... Yeah.
The Guardian's quite helpful here. It says, yeah, sure, if you fix history, we'll bring you back.
Yeah, it's almost like he's setting the... this is your mission. This is what you've got to do for this episode.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's no reason for that to be the rules.
No.
Because how's McCoy going to get back? He can't get back.
Mm.
So somebody else has to go back, reset the timeline exactly, or just generally,
and
then he has to come back with them, I presume.
I mean, in fairness, even Uhura and Scotty point out the ludicrous long shot of what they are attempting, but Spock reminds them that apparently there's no alternative.
Well, he's decided there's no alternative.
Yeah, okay.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah, okay, to give them their due, at this point, the whole going back in time to save McCoy was a nonsense. There was an alternative. But now they are trapped there, so they may as well.
Yeah, but they're also rushing things a bit. It's like you've said in the past, it's time travel, there's no hurry.
Yeah.
They could wait a month and then go back. Mm-hmm. Or a day or whatever.
Let's think about it. Spock, you've got that sort of brain. Take a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Ponder. Maybe you can come up with something. Maybe you can... Yeah, it's not like what can we think of in the first, literally, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Well.
Anyway, that's what they do. They leap and emerge through a wall which has a poster on it advertising a boxing match at Madison Square Gardens.
Like this, yes. It's a New York street in the 30s, I think 1930, and it's promoting Kid McCook versus Mike Mason.
Yes, I've got some trivia about that. I can give you it now or save it till the end.
Let's save it till the end.
Okay.
As long as you remember.
I've got it written down, it's okay.
See, I love this location and time period. I'm a big fan. Not sure if I mentioned it on here, but I think my top 5 movies of all time would be The Sting.
Okay.
And I just love, although the Sting was Chicago.
It's the era.
The era, yeah. I mean, it's obviously a terrible time to be alive, and just the
interwar period,
the Great Depression. So not a fun time, but I love movies set around there. So as soon as I seen this, I knew I would be enjoying the episode.
Good. There's a couple of women there who kind of look at them a bit askew as Spock puts his hands over his ears to hide his difference.
Yeah, and I think Spock himself describes the time they've arrived as barbaric.
I think he says that about any period in Earth's history, though. It's like, it's either barbaric or particularly barbaric. Those are the two settings he has for Earth history.
I'm assuming, in comparison to Vulcan, then Vulcan must be a very peaceful place.
Well, so he makes out. I think, though, Vulcan was very violent, and the story goes, until they adopted this way of logic and ended it. So they were warring and fighting, and then they all just turned to logic and stopped.
Okay. Kirk and Spock appreciate the problem that their dress is causing, and know that they need to either disguise or explain Spock's particular look. And so they decide to partake in a bit of thievery, which, after being apparently successful, causes Kirk to get a little bit too cocky about how easy they're going to find things.
Well? You're a police officer. I recognize the traditional accoutrements.
He was saying you'll have no trouble explaining it.
My friend is obviously Chinese. I see you've noticed the ears. They're actually easy to explain.
Perhaps the unfortunate accident I had as a child.
The unfortunate accident he had as a child. He caught his head in a mechanical rice picker. But fortunately, there was an American missionary living close by who was actually a skilled plastic surgeon in civilian life.
All right. Drop those bundles and put your hands on that wall there. Come on.
Oh, how careless of your wife to let you go out that way.
What?
Oh, yes, it's quite untidy here. Let me help you.
Yes.
Well, firstly, I did enjoy the sort of double act, the tone. I like that. However, a little bit racist.
Minor
these days.
racism, a little bit of white saviorism there with the American plastic surgeon being required.
Wives allowing people to dictate.
Although, to be fair, that might be some taking advantage of the time period.
Could be, yeah. I'm almost surprised that they didn't play a little Chinese music over the top of it,
Yeah, a little motif.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Spock nerve pinches this guy in front of a crowd of people.
Yeah. Although, if you're accepting that in this universe you can karate chop someone, then surely the pinch... I think the pinch would do more damage in real life than that little chop. If you grab someone, that would
the muscle.
Yeah, it'd be very painful. You could certainly, maybe not knock them out, but you could certainly make them fall if you were able to grab it hard enough.
Maybe. It's not quite what he's doing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, they run off with the clothes that Kirk had stolen.
Yeah, there's police whistles.
And they nip down an alley, which we've probably seen before, behind the 21st Street mission.
Yes.
And make their way into the cellar.
The basement.
The cellar.
The basement.
A bit under the ground level. Floor -1.
Out of breath and on an adrenaline high, Kirk notes that Spock appeared to be enjoying his predicament in a human-like way.
Yeah, Spock objects to that. He thinks that insults are not within Kirk's prerogative as his commanding officer.
Yeah. And we cut to them in more appropriate clothing, as Spock notes that they have about a week to go before McCoy arrives. Now there's two very specific points that brought Back to the Future to mind for me.
Okay.
So this one, if you remember, in Back to the Future, Marty McFly arrived and he had to hang around for a week until...
The letter arrived?
Well, no, until the dance.
Okay, right, yes, in the first movie.
Yeah. So I reckon they have stolen this from Back to the Future.
In a sort of timey-wimey way?
Well, it's all about time travel, so they probably went to the future, read the script, come back and then filmed this, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We'll know if there's any additional sort of crossovers. Spock's theory on how they're going to find McCoy is terrible.
Remind me.
Time is like a river and it'll sweep them to the right place, and if it doesn't, there is no plan B.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't find that terrible.
That was fine.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to explain time in some way, you've got to try and make it make sense into...
Yeah, I suppose the theory they're going is there's a focal point, and that's why history was able to be changed. Yeah. And all they have to do now is identify that focal point.
I mean, it's very chancy.
Well, of course, there's a lucky element involved, isn't there?
Yeah.
Spock, I think, believes there's more information in the tricorder that they can't access without, well, the ship's computers, as he puts it.
Yeah, and he sneers at Kirk's suggestion that he could perhaps rig something up in their current position.
But Kirk reverse psychologies him into taking on the task, nevertheless.
Yeah, he knows how to push his buttons.
Tells him, he understands it's an extremely complex problem in logic, and he shouldn't even have asked him.
Now, at this point, they are interrupted by the arrival of a woman from upstairs. And I think you've mentioned this before, that it's something that they have to do quite often to cover up Spock's ears. That's a bit of a trope throughout the season, or the show.
Well, it happens again, at least.
Okay.
So, very conveniently, there's a hat here.
Yeah. She doesn't buy the lie about them being cold outside, but also doesn't scream and run away at the sight of two strange men in our basement.
She seems familiar with this sort of experience.
Yeah, so I'm watching this again, taking notes live, watching this for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's not a natural reaction you would be getting out of there. But from what we come to learn, this is her line of work.
Yeah. She offers them employment, and Spock queries the rate of pay, much to Kirk's surprise.
Yeah, it's going to be 15 cents an hour for 10 hours a day. We shouldn't skip over the obvious magnetism that, which itself is underpinned by a romantic little motif between the two of them.
Kirk and Edith.
Yes.
Yeah, this issue about being paid for the work, because obviously I don't think Kirk cares about whether they really get paid for the work.
No, yeah, because he needs to buy, or Spock needs to get parts.
So when Spock says he wants paid, to Kirk's surprise, Spock has to explain it's for his hobby.
Yes.
Which is going to be building this computer.
Yeah. And Kirk, I think he ends up telling Edith the truth about stealing clothes and running away from the
and gives
cops.
The real names as well, and confirms that they are in the 21st Street mission, which she runs.
Yeah. Well, she identifies herself as Edith Keeler.
She then leaves, and Kirk tells Spock that he approves of his hobby.
Yes.
He knows he's won that little battle.
We're now in the dining hall of the mission, where they take their food and sit at a table with other patrons as Edith walks in, and they are informed that the food has to be paid for.
Of course.
Not financially.
No.
But by listening to the proclamations from a goody two-shoes.
Kirk shuts down a heckler, I think, at this point, doesn't he?
No, it's just the man sitting next to him. He's not insulting her, but he's making this point that, you need to listen to her ramble on if you want fed.
Yeah, but Kirk explains that they want to listen to her.
Yeah, but it's not a heckler.
Okay.
He's not heckling. She's not started speaking yet.
It's just an irritant.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And this surprises Spock, but obviously he's very attracted to her, understandably so. A 30-odd John Collins was not to be sniffed at.
Especially in soft focus.
Yes. So she starts her speech, and it seems that she's less than sympathetic to those in attendance, and very conveniently, but inappropriately, as a scientific visionary.
Now let's start by getting one thing straight. I'm not a do-gooder. If you're a bum, if you can't break off with a booze or whatever it is that makes you a bad risk, then get out. Now, I don't pretend to tell you how to find happiness in love when every day is just a struggle to survive. But I do insist that you do survive, because the days and the years ahead are worth living for. One day soon, man is going to be able to harness incredible energies, maybe even the atom. Energies that could ultimately hurl us to other worlds in some sort of spaceship. And the men that reach out into space will be able to find ways to feed the hungry millions of the world and to cure their diseases. They will be able to find a way to give each man hope and a common future. And those are the days worth living for. Our deserts will bloom.
Development of atomic power is years away. Space flight years after that.
Now, it won't come
Speculation.
tomorrow or the
Gifted
day
insight.
after, but it will come.
I find her most uncommon, Mr. Spock.
Prepare for tomorrow. Get ready. Don't.
She certainly is most uncommon. Talk about not understanding or appreciating your audience.
Well, I don't think they're taking all the nuance in, are they?
Yeah.
I think they get the gist of it. The world's getting better. Hang in there.
That's what I'm saying, but it's like anytime you're making a speech or you're talking to someone, you don't just get in there and say what you want to say, you have to adjust it to what they will appreciate. And talking about it so specific about atomic bombs and all this type of stuff, they're not interested. Look at them, they're homeless and they're down now. They don't care. But that's just, you could tell them that things are getting better. The FDR, whoever it is in charge, is going to make the country great again. And things will improve. Know your audience, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, if you say so.
And where did you get this information from anyway about atomic bombs and all that sort of stuff?
Ah, she's obviously a gifted visionary.
See, again, watching this, I thought that we might find out that she herself was in some way, had an insight into the future. But no, not at all.
Well, not really, no. Just sort of general things.
Mm-hmm.
Very near future.
Yeah.
Kirk is very much intrigued by this.
More so by her.
And by the speaker, yeah.
Yeah.
And later she comes to speak to Kirk and Spock and compliments the work they did in the cellar.
Yes. And offers, as we heard at the top of the podcast, a flop for the night.
Yeah, I don't think it's her flop, but she knows of its availability and she is able to secure it for them. I think next time we come to see Spock, a few days have passed at least, because he's put together this computer.
Yeah, just let me mention, as that scene ended, they both sort of smirk as an old drunk cowboy wanders past.
Yes, I think he is a very characteristic face, doesn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, so we're now at the...
Yes, I think a few days have passed at least, maybe a week, and Spock has managed to put this computer together.
Yeah, well, he's rigged up a lab, hasn't he, in this room.
It looks like something out of Mary Shelley.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to press a button and it's going to bring something to life, the tricorder or whatever it is. And he's upset with Kirk, who's returned from the shops with vegetables and not platinum. Yeah,
this, another time it sort of reminded me of Back to the Future.
Okay.
When Marty goes back to the 50s and he mentions the fact that you only need some plutonium to get it working again. Doc's obviously shocked, astounded at that sort of casual request for something so hard to come by.
Yeah. Kirk explains to Spock at this point that they've spent all their money on these vegetables and therefore can't afford any plutonium.
They can offer him a hard roll.
That's it. Spock says that the equipment he's being made to work with is barely any further on than stone knives and bear skins. And he repeats this claim to Edith when she comes to see them.
But Kirk reminds him that McCoy will be along soon and that there are no guarantees they will meet. Therefore, Spock must get things working.
Well, absolutely, just to find out what the focal point is.
Yeah.
Edith is there, I should say, to offer them more work. But I think they have to respond immediately.
Yeah, but she is distracted by the equipment in the room, but doesn't seem perturbed by Spock's semi-sarcastic response.
I think he calls it a mnemonic memory cell.
Yeah.
And like I say, he repeats his reference to knives and bearskins.
Uh-huh. Again, I just had a Back to the Future vibe. When Clara Clayton, she is not put off by the Doc's
ravings.
He's interested in science fiction, and she too is a sort of kindred spirit. I very much felt that
okay.
here. Yeah.
Speaking of Back to the Future, we begin the next scene with some men fixing clocks.
We do, yes. Kirk and Spock are sweeping up, and they note a couple of guys who have got their tools out on the aforementioned clocks. And we cut briefly later to Spock as he tries to open the combination lock that houses them.
Edith's very disappointed in them.
Yeah, later on in the basement. They've obviously been caught.
Well, she's found that they've been stolen and knows who must have taken them.
How would she find out they've been stolen? So the guys
would
obviously
have reported them being stolen. They must have come back.
Why? They've locked up. If they've left them for the night,
maybe they didn't mean to leave their tools. They've come back to take them away.
Not satisfied with that. We could have seen how they end up getting caught.
Don't think it's important. They get caught.
Makes them look stupid if they can't even steal some tools without getting caught.
Yeah, she's not buying Spock's explanation that he would have returned them, but she does buy it when Kirk repeats it.
Yeah, and this I wasn't, it's Kirk basically it says...
if she says it, it's true.
Yeah. It's a little bit like Star Wars.
Well,
when the first one is it Obi-Wan Kenobi uses the Force, doesn't it? To, the Stormtroopers come up.
Yes, these are not the droids you're looking for.
That's the one I'm thinking of, yeah. See, I know my sci-fi these days.
Yeah, you've been watching your Star Wars, haven't you?
Yeah, well, like I say, in Back to the Future, bit of the old sci-fi.
Edith's condition for accepting Kirk's word is that he walks her home. Because she
aye.
has more questions.
Oh, yeah. You're onto something there.
They live in the same building,
Oh, even better.
just for security. She says they don't belong here, and Spock is intrigued by this.
Yes, he asks where she thinks they should be, and her response is that Spock belongs beside Kirk and always has, whilst Kirk himself belongs in another place. Is that like hell?
She'll figure it out, she says, eventually.
Yeah.
And Spock makes another comment about the furnace, and she says that the word captain is implied at the end of his statement, even when he doesn't say it.
Yes. So outside, they walk along as Goodnight, Sweetheart plays on the radio from a shop, and she asks him why Spock calls him Captain.
Yeah, asks if they served in the war together, and Kirk is a wee bit vague. He just says that they served together.
Yeah.
She asks if she can help them, and Kirk goes off on a weird spiel about a book that'll be written in 100 years by a guy from another planet, where he puts these 3 words
Yeah, let me help.
over I love you as the best 3-word combination.
I mean, it's 100 years from when they filmed this in the 60s, so it wasn't obviously referring to... And this is the 30s, so it was obviously something in the future anyway. I thought maybe...
10 years from now.
Yes. But so, yeah, it wasn't a reference to anything.
No, it's another fictional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, this author will come from a planet that orbits the far left star on Orion's belt.
Yes. And when her gaze returns from the sky, it looks like they're about to kiss as we fade to a shot of a bridge against the New York skyline. I'm assuming it's a Brooklyn Bridge.
It's debatable that they'd be able to see the stars in New York City
In the 30s?
with the light pollution.
30s?
Yeah, but still,
Nah, I think they'd be fine back then.
I don't know.
Mm.
Anyhow, Spock has by now used these clock tools.
He has. And he's created a microfilm machine.
A fish thing,
Fish,
yeah.
yeah.
He's read a report of Edith's premature death.
This confused me slightly. What was he looking at here?
Old news reports.
And it just happened. Yeah, a little bit contrived.
What he's trying to do, I think, is cross-reference the existing database that his tricorder had with the recordings it made after McCoy leapt into the portal.
Okay.
But it's not made very clear.
Just then, a perky Kirk returns, and Spock tells him that he may have found their focal point in time, but that he's probably going to find it quite distressing.
Kirk notes that this computer is getting a little bit overheated.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Kirk sees it himself or Spock tells him, but he mentions that Edith is due to meet with President FDR in 6 years' time.
Kirk reads it off the screen. Yes, he's very excited about this. He doesn't understand why Spock referred to it as being distressing, because it shows that she's going to go on to become very influential and known.
Yeah, well, she's known as a slum angel. But before they can read any more, what happens?
The computer explodes.
Yeah, a circuit goes up in smoke and they lose the facility. So Kirk is quite buoyed by this apparently positive news that Edith has an important role to play in the future, but Spock offers an alternative future.
He does, and one that's a little bit more grim.
Yeah, I think he actually tells her she dies.
Well, he tells Kirk that he read the obituary, but he's not sure which version of history is the truth.
Yeah, he tells him it was a traffic accident in that particular version, but I think Kirk wants to believe that he must be mistaken, as both can't be true.
Captain Edith Keeler is the focal point in time we've been looking for. The point in time that both we and Dr. McCoy have been drawn to.
She has 2 possible futures then. And depending on whether she lives or dies, all of history will be changed. And McCoy
Is the random element.
in his condition, what does he do? Does he kill her?
Or perhaps he prevents her from being killed. We don't know which.
Get this thing fixed. We must find out before McCoy arrives.
Captain, suppose we discover that in order to set things straight again,
Edith Keeler must die.
Meanwhile, in the street,
The guy from the mission.
steals some milk from a doorstep.
Just as McCoy materialises, shouting it again of assassins and and murderers.
To be fair to McCoy, it's only a few seconds since he was last shouting about assassins and murderers from his perspective.
Sure.
The man drops the milk and runs off.
Yeah, after McCoy demands to know from him what planet it is.
Yeah, it's a strange question, isn't it? You there?
And I think he says as well, I won't kill you now. If any strange man shouting about murderers tells me he won't kill me, I'm thinking he's going to kill me.
Yeah, he's at least considering
You just don't mention killing me.
Yes. Why would you even bring it up?
Yeah.
We see Kirk and Edith climbing the stairs at the flop.
Yeah, I think we arrive midway through a conversation where Edith wants to know why Kirk finds her belief that man will reach or fly to the moon amusing.
He just thinks it's funny that she's talking about it, and she says she thinks that the money wasted on war and death will soon be redirected to common goals.
It's a good message.
Yeah.
We should be doing more of that these days.
Of course.
Back outside.
McCoy catches up with this hobo from the mission and examines him with his two hands on the man's skull.
Well, I've noted here that I can only imagine the man thinks he's about to be raped.
Or killed.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive.
Something terrible is going to happen to him anyway.
I think, yeah, 'cause he grabs him round the thighs.
Yeah, and also around the face.
Yeah.
And I think what McCoy's trying to figure out is which alien species are you that can mimic Earth like this?
Yeah. And then he continues his rant and he starts talking about hospitals and medical procedures, and he collapses to the ground, allowing the man to steal his phaser and run off.
And then disintegrate himself.
Yeah, well, you don't mess about with technology.
I hope he wasn't important.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So the history has been changed.
Yeah,
They've not rectified this.
Nope.
Yeah.
Anyhow, obviously he's not the focal point in time, so he doesn't matter as much.
Nah. Back to the flop house. Kirk returns to an update from Spock that he's going to need another 2 days on his equipment.
Kirk is upset at this. He thinks McCoy could be here already, and
Well, he is, yeah.
anxious for some kind of answer.
Yeah, because it could affect Edith, and he must know if she lives or dies.
Yeah, of course. We then proceed to the next morning, where there's still, I think, homeless folks sleeping in the doorways, and a town crier is, well, at least a newspaper salesperson, is trying to get the news out to people.
McCoy is wandering around the street like a zombie, and he spots the mission, which he enters and compliments Edith on her coffee.
He does, but he's still ranting a little bit and seems agitated, so she takes him through the back for a lie down.
Yeah, unfortunately, he just misses Spock, who starts his shift behind the counter serving food.
Seconds later, yes. Really unfortunate.
Back at the flop house.
Yeah, it's obvious that at least those 2 days have passed since Spock said he was going to work on the computer. He has more information on the changes that have taken place in the timeline.
Yeah, and I wasn't too keen in the sort of message here. Okay. Apparently, McCoy changed history and it's being blamed on, I don't know, the pacifists for Hitler winning World War II.
Yes, what they're saying is McCoy saves Edith from dying.
Yeah.
She gets her audience with Roosevelt and persuades him not to enter World War II as the leader of a massive nationwide pacifist movement.
Yeah.
America delays its entry, presumably despite Pearl Harbor, I don't know. And the Germans get their atomic bomb developed first and are able to win the war.
Yeah. More violence was needed.
Well,
Quicker violence.
Spock and Kirk note, or at least Spock and Kirk note that her idea was correct, but deployed at the wrong time, apparently. This is a very right-wing position to take, isn't it? Yeah, peace is for after we've won the war. What Spock can't tell Kirk, however, is when she is to die.
No.
And when Kirk says he is in love with Edith,
which is a nice admission. I like the character.
And I think, as long as you've got a full handle on how long they've been there now, they've been there for weeks. This is not like a 2-day thing. And I think if you watch it with only one eye on the television, you might feel like this is really quick. But they've been there for weeks, and he's actually fallen in love with her. And Spock, whether it's jealous Spock coming back from the past or whether it's just his plain assessment, insists, unfortunately, she must die. Yeah, I'm going to give Spock the benefit of the doubt here. I think it's he's assessing the situation and realises the impact of the different scenarios. So I don't think it's jealousy. Your assumption at this point is that they'll find a way to save her and stop history from being changed.
No.
You didn't assume that?
No, because of my experience with Star Trek, I don't have a lot of recurring characters.
Just kill people off.
So I was quite happy to accept that, yeah, she would not be coming back.
Okay.
And also, because of the intense relationship and the proclamation of love, it's dead meat. There's no way this can happen. One of them has to die and it won't be Kirk.
Well, you could just leave her in the past.
Not after. But yeah, I suppose he could, but I was thinking she has to die.
Okay. In the mission back room, McCoy wakes, presumably 3 days from when he went to sleep. And he's a bit groggy. Tells Edith who he is, and she notes that his story doesn't ring true.
Yeah, he does seem to be more of his old self, however, as he places himself in Earth around 1925. So it's not a bad guess.
Yeah, he's not far out.
I mean, how would you know that? As a doctor, and again, how many years in the future is it the show?
It's the 23rd century, so 250 years from now.
250 years from now. Now, if we went back 250 years, you wouldn't be able to tell, sort of what a decade it was by just landing in, this must be...
No, but that's because time wasn't as well recorded 250 years ago.
Even then, 250 years, within 5 years.
Well, if you got dumped in a random decade of the 20th century, you'd be able to work out which decade it was.
Yeah, I've been watching TV shows based on it, but you won't be in the future in 250 years' time.
Well, maybe not. Who knows? Maybe the 20th century remains iconic through all time.
Yeah.
Who knows? It was when spaceflight began. It was when all the major world wars happened. It's a fairly iconic century.
Yeah, but when you look back, you see people at war in uniform. You don't see them in jeans and a flannel shirt.
That's true. Anyhow.
It's impressive anyway.
Yeah. He also tells Edith that he doesn't believe in her either when she questions his position. I think he says he's a doctor or a medical officer on the USS Enterprise, and she says he can't be in the Navy because his uniform's wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think she also mentions her friend that talks of Earth like he does.
Yeah, but the connection is not made, and she leaves him to go back to sleep.
I think he assumes that she's referring to a psychiatrist or some sort of doctor.
Yeah, probably. Back at the flop, Kirk follows Edith up the stairs and is able to save her when she trips and falls.
Yeah, I think she claims that she could have broken her neck, and Kirk obviously appreciates the significance of that.
Yeah, Spock disappears into his and Kirk's room as Kirk and Edith kiss at the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm. And she leaves him in a confused state.
Bewildered.
As he heads back downstairs, Spock points out that, as we noted, the fall might have been her fatal destiny.
Captain, I did not plan to eavesdrop.
No, of course you didn't.
I must point out that when she stumbled, she might have died right there had you not caught her.
It's not yet time. McCoy isn't here.
We're not that sure of our facts. Who's to say when the exact time will come? Save her. Do as your heart tells you to do. And millions will die who did not die before.
In the back room of the mission, McCoy seems even better when he awakes once more and gets a bit more information from Edith about the setup there and how things are operated.
Yeah, she compliments him on his remarkable recovery, and this is one of probably the biggest issue I've got with the episode.
Okay.
He's fine. A couple of days. And that's
maybe
it.
a week.
Okay, a week.
But they just didn't know, that's the thing. They didn't know how he would react to that overdose.
100 times.
Mm.
It's an awful lot to have.
Well, now they know. He'll be able to record that.
There's an assumption as well that, it might be that he's recovered, but his internal organs might be damaged beyond repair.
Well, yeah, who knows? But we'll find out eventually.
Maybe he's only got 2 years to live now.
It's possible. This is the bit that I don't understand. Edith tells him that she doesn't need his help right now. She's going out. Her young man, Kirk,
who's 3 or 4 years older than her,
is taking her to a Clark Gable movie.
Okay.
But in the next scene, he doesn't know he's taking her to a Clark Gable movie.
Maybe she's going to make that decision.
She's going to say that she's decided, and she's going to convince him to do it.
Yeah, or else they're agreed to go to the cinema,
and that's what she's going to decide that they see. Okay.
Yeah, because he won't necessarily know what's on. She knows he's not particularly current.
Importantly, she is stupefied or mystified by McCoy's ignorance of the Clark Gable name.
Now this supports my point. If you're going to be aware of what decade it is,
You should maybe know.
cultural, he's one of the biggest stars of the period and of all time.
Yeah, well, I've got that in my trivia. We'll come to this. He probably wasn't famous yet at that point.
1930?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not.
So maybe McCoy's only an expert on 1925 to 1930.
He wouldn't have been famous. Yeah, it still doesn't make any difference because he wouldn't have been famous at that point in time.
He became famous.
Yeah, so he should have known who she was talking about.
You would have thought so.
Yeah.
But he's been ill.
Okay.
Anyhow, out on the street, Kirk, Spock and Edith, this must be later, it's night time, are leaving the mission together. Oh, maybe they're in the mission, so it might not be that much later. Spock heads off one direction, the other two go.
Yeah, I'm away on a date. Spock, I'll just kick about then for a while. Can I not come in? Nope.
Off you go. Edith suggests to Kirk that they catch the Clark Gable movie, but is about to reveal something fairly significant.
Yeah. Now, I should say as well, Kirk does a terrible job. He knows that she's going to die in a traffic accident.
Yeah.
But he himself, they almost get knocked down as soon as he steps onto the road.
Yeah, but McCoy's not there. He thinks they're safe as long as McCoy's not there.
I wouldn't be taking those chances.
Well, he explained that to Spock earlier, remember?
I would still be extra
McCoy's
cautious.
the factor that changes everything.
Yeah. But you don't know he's not there. Because obviously he is here.
Anyhow, Kirk, like McCoy, acts like he doesn't know who Clark Gable is.
He doesn't.
Which leads to Edith saying, Leonard McCoy said the same thing.
Ah.
And there's a eureka moment for Kirk. She says he's in the back of the mission, and Kirk runs, shouting on Spock.
Well, he orders her to stay where she is.
Yes.
Don't move. He runs back across the road, shouting to Spock that McCoy is here.
Yes, and as he does so, McCoy comes out of the mission and they greet each other like old friends.
Well, they are old friends and they hug and embrace each other. Now, hearing this, and what obviously following him across the road, Edith is intrigued, wants to know what's going on, and she starts to
disobey the order,
make her way back, and of course we see the headlights like a coyote train coming at her.
Yes, and Kirk realises he could stop this from happening.
Well, his instinct, his natural reaction, his first reaction is he takes a few steps forward to do that.
Yes, like Spock
shouts at him no, effectively.
He turns and is able to block McCoy from also stepping out to save her.
Yes, so he actually prevents McCoy saving her. We hear the screech, we hear a bang, and we cut to the lifeless body of Edith lying on the road.
McCoy is very upset.
Well, he's angry.
He tells Kirk that he deliberately stopped him from saving her. Does he know what he's done?
And very poignantly, Spock confirms that he does indeed know what he has done. Quite sombre. I like that. I liked how they handled this.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sad end to an episode.
It was, yeah.
They, at this point, are returned to the Guardian, apparently only moments after having entered.
Which would make sense, yeah.
Spock reports their success, but Kirk is visibly upset, telling the others that they should get the hell out of there. Yeah,
well, I think there's a moment where they're not sure what the next, what his order's going to be. I think he's asked, will we beam up? And he pauses and as if he's thinking about it. And they're quite relieved, I think, and concerned at the time it's taken. And as you say, he says, let's get the hell out of here, which was a nice final line.
A controversial one with the network, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine back then it might have been.
And that's it. On to the next adventure. Everything's reset. He doesn't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, see, that's a good point, isn't it? It's how long does he mourn the loss? Does he ever refer to her in the future? The one that got away, or the one that he lost?
Who can say?
Or does he just, like he has in the past, there's a broad in every spaceport?
Well, yeah, this one maybe hurt him more.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any other way they could have resolved it? I know a lot of people, there's a theory that goes around, they could just have taken her to the future. But
no, because you're taking her, that's still affecting the past.
And also the Guardian's not pulling them back to the future while she's still alive.
Yeah.
So there's no way to take her back to the future.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a very satisfactory from a
narrative standpoint,
yeah. I thought they'd done well, and I think this is the best way to resolve it.
Given that it was her night out with Kirk that led to her death, is that a paradox?
Explain.
Well, it's the fact that they're there that caused her to die, but they only went there to make her die because McCoy saved her.
Yeah.
Would it have been caused some other way? I guess it must have. It was inevitable, I suppose. If she's this focal point, and her death was either inevitable or only McCoy could prevent it, I suppose.
But I think all the actions that they take when they're there, they have changed history. Maybe not the focal point, as we say, but the chap that died.
Yeah.
And just all the other interactions.
Well, I think, the original version of the story explains why that guy's death doesn't change anything.
Right.
But that wasn't told on screen, so.
Okay. A thoroughly enjoyable.
I mean, it's regarded as, if not the best, one of the best.
Sure. I can see why.
Yeah.
It was good.
Standout episode.
Yeah.
Should we go on with the trivia?
Sure.
Originally aired on the 6th of April 1967, and it was directed by Joseph Pevney. You've heard of him before. This is the 5th of his 14 episodes, and as ever, if you want to hear more about him, go back and listen to Arena. It's quite a good episode as well. Harlan Ellison wrote the episode. I told you way back at the start of this series to remember the name.
You did.
And I hope you did.
I did.
He notoriously contributed only this episode, although I think there's some talk he was involved in plot discussions ahead of one of the motion pictures. He's maybe best remembered from a TV perspective for his work on The Twilight Zone, and he consulted on Babylon 5, along with having an extensive bibliography of novels, short stories and other books. He won many and various awards for his work, including 8 Hugos. He was nominated for a Grammy Award in 2009. He was famously irascible and cantankerous, and disliked the revisions that were made to his original script for this episode. On the other hand, he was very pleased with the graphic novel that was created from his original script, which I read this past week. It has a few changes to the story. It doesn't have McCoy getting injected. It's got a drug-dealing crewman becomes overdosed on his own drugs due to the same sort of accident, and he's the one that leaps through the portal and causes history to be changed.
Would you say the graphic novel improves upon the episode?
It's just a different version of the story. I think they're both very good.
Okay.
And like you say, that the graphic novel explains there's another man does get killed, and Spock asks, does his death not mean that we've not fixed history? And the Guardian explains, well, he counted and he was important, he wasn't important enough to affect the flow of history.
Okay.
It's well worth taking the time you can get your hands on the graphic novel.
Well, I can, because you've got it right.
I've got it right in front of me.
Yes, I'll be borrowing that.
Let you read that, yeah. But anyone listening, if they want to get a hold of that, they can't get my copy, but they can get a hold of it off the usual bookstores, Abe Books, or wherever you want to buy your books. Harlan Ellison died in 2018 when he was 84. Joan Collins played Edith Keeler in her only Star Trek appearance. She's best known for her long-running role in Dynasty, and remains active 70 years on from her first film appearance in 1951's Lady Godiva Rides Again, and we should not mention a lady's age.
We shouldn't.
Dick Cheney was one of 2 Columbo connections in this episode. You'll remember the other one?
No.
I didn't write his name down when we talked about it earlier. There's 2. The other one's somebody the Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically 2 background guys who are also background guys in hundreds of other things. Cheney, for example, was in Gunsmoke, Kojak, Godfather Part 2, and is now either 105 years old or dead, but I have no evidence either way.
What Columbo episode was he in?
I didn't write that
down.
The other guy was in Leonard Nimoy's episode.
Yep, Stitch and Crime.
Yeah, that's
a party guest. Party scene was good in that episode of Columbo where he was eating all the vol au vents and stuffing his face and had a bit of indigestion.
We always talk about how we enjoyed that episode.
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler makes an uncredited appearance in this episode as himself.
Wonder who gets the royalties.
He's credited as a writer on a number of German documentaries from the 1940s based on his memoir/manifesto Mein Kampf. Mm-hmm. He was born in 1889 and died in 1945 at the age of 56 from a self-inflicted bullet wound to the head.
They're good at things. They're good on at it.
As I said, this is generally considered one of, if not the single best episode of Star Trek on any platform, like any of the series. The Guardian makes a comeback in the animated series and is featured in lots of novels, but you don't see it again in a live-action series.
I'm not disappointed. He was a bit pompous.
It's one of these things where you think, oh, why don't they just go back to the Guardian if they want to fix that? But
exactly.
I imagine he's got his own free will and would not allow it.
Yeah.
Actually, in the graphic novel, the drug dealing crewman, when they bring him back, he tries to go back through the Guardian to the same point in time and reset it once again, but the Guardian explains you can't do that. He's actually jumped into the heart of a sun and will suffer there for eternity.
Sounds sensible.
The same backlot was used in Miri and Return of the Archons. We saw them earlier in the series, and we mentioned at the time on at least one of those episodes, it's the one from the Andy Griffith Show.
Yep.
The historical, this is an interesting one, the historical reel footage that we see through the Guardian was technically used in breach of copyright when the episode first aired. It belonged to Paramount, and their holding company later bought Desilu, which resolved any potential conflict. But in the circumstances, I think they should stop putting copyright claims on my YouTube videos whenever I put an episode of this podcast up.
Yes.
The episode City on the Edge of Forever won a Hugo and a Writers Guild Award.
Wait a second. Your YouTube videos?
Well, I put them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're on them. It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
I don't edit you out or anything.
Okay. Nice. Well, I put
Do you not listen to the YouTube videos?
Okay. I put the podcast up. So it's my podcast. Then that's fine. If that's how we're doing it. Okay. Cool.
Well, it was a communal my.
Crack on.
The episode won a Hugo and a Writers Guild Award, albeit the latter was awarded to Harlan Ellison for his original script. And at the ceremony, he railed against editorial interference with the work of writers in front of an audience, including Gene Roddenberry and the other Star Trek executives. The boxing poster story.
Yes.
So it's Kid McCook against Mike Mason. Deep Space Nine later does an episode where they go back to 1930s San Francisco, and there's a poster for McCook against Mason 2, their first rematch since Madison Square Gardens.
Who won the first?
It doesn't say.
Oh, come on. Okay.
A couple of anachronistic references. Clark Gable, like we said, wouldn't have been a leading man or well known at the time, and Goodnight Sweetheart wasn't written until 1931.
Time travel reference as well. Goodnight Sweetheart, a UK-based time travel sitcom.
Yes, with its own paradoxes. Mm-hmm. In terms of international titles, the French went simply with contretemps, which means mishap, maybe underselling it a little. The Germans not much better with Griff in die Geschichte, trip into history. Again, bit low-key. Then the Japanese take that one step further with Kiken na Kako Henotabi, or Dangerous Trip to the Past.
That's better.
I think I prefer the original title.
Yeah.
Next week, 29th and final episode of Season 1, Operation Annihilate, which is another well-regarded episode.
Look forward to it.
In the meantime, you can get hold of us on social media. We're at Trek Podcast on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can go to StarTrekPodcast.com where there's a post up for each and every episode if you want to talk to us about the podcast or about Star Trek or about anything else that is vaguely related.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye-bye.